During the last couple of tutorials, when we've looked at using the titler, in the first instance to create a static title, and in the second instance using text that scrolls vertically over our video, or in this case we used a photograph, but the principle remains the same regardless of whether you use a photograph or a video. Well, during those couple of tutorials, when we were looking at the titler, we also casually implemented one of the styles. So I thought in this tutorial it would be worth having a look at the text styles area in a little bit more detail. So I'll run up to title, and for our example I'm just going to use a default still. Within this dialog box, you can probably guess what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave everything as the default, so I'll OK it. And then now, with our titler panel open, let's have a quick look at what we can do with any of those title styles that we see right down at the bottom. Incidentally, the way I'm recording these movies for you mean that I've got this titler panel open in full view. It's quite likely that when you open it, once you've created a new title, that it will float above your copy of Premiere Pro. All I've done is I've resized it. Okay, so that's easy enough to do if you want to resize it as well. Right, what have we got? Well, there's our photograph that's on video track 1 back on the Premiere Pro timeline. If you don't want to see this, or indeed if you can't see it, it's probably because of this button up here. Once it's selected like this, then I can see whatever is on our timeline. If I click it, then we now don't see it. That doesn't remove it from Premiere Pro's timeline, it's just made it invisible here for us. I find it very useful to have it on, so I'll click it again, show background video. Okay, so here's the title styles down at the bottom, and you can see there are quite a number of these. You might need to scroll down to see them all. Okay, now before you can actually do anything in terms of these styles, you have to have some text on your canvas, so I'll do that. With my text tool, I'll type in the word Anglesey. However, because it's in white at the moment, the text, then that might be one of the reasons why you don't want to see this background photograph. Because as it is at the moment against this photograph, that white text has disappeared. Well, pretty much anyway. So I'm going to change it. I'll come down over to the properties area, and here where it says color, oh, by the way, we'll be looking at this properties panel in a little bit more detail in the next tutorial. For the moment, just bear with me. So double clicking on here opens up my color picker, and then you would just simply choose a color from within here. Black, for example, will show up clearly, of course, on that sort of whitish grey background. However, for our example, I want to choose the color for this text taken from the actual guitar. So I'll click on this cancel button, and then now by coming back over to color and using the color picker, I can sample the color that I want to use from our guitar. There's fine. And now I can see my word Anglesey there. And this is useful because it now seems I've misspelt Anglesey. I couldn't detect that before when it was white against white. So now I'll correct the spelling. Okay, and if I want to move it to somewhere else, grab the selection tool and of course drag it to wherever you feel fit. I'll start off in this top corner, not quite the top corner of the image, but the top corner of this safe area, this textual safe area. And if I want to enlarge it in terms of font size, the quickest way is to roll your cursor over the corner, left click, and drag it out until you get the size that you want it to be. And you'll see over here in the properties panel the font style, the font size, and the aspect, etc, etc. Well, we're concerned with the font size and the aspect. Notice as I enlarge it once more, those numbers of course update to reflect the size that I now make this. Now over here with the aspect, I notice it's just above 100%, so to my eyes that will distort the text, so I'll take this to 100%. Okay, better. So then now I've created some text. You would imagine it would be a simple process to come down to these styles and click on any of these, but notice what happens. Bearing in mind I've got the selection tool selected, I'll click on one of these styles, this one for example. Well, as you can see, it's done absolutely nothing to our text, although you might notice here in the Tools panel that this particular style has been added here. Well, that's great, but it's of no use to us really, is it? We want to apply this style to the text itself. Well, of course, what we need to do is have the text first of all selected before we apply any style. Now, just before I remove that, do notice though, if I start to add in some new text, down here for example, then whatever I've got placed here, whatever I click last in terms of styles and registered here in the Tools panel, then that particular style will be the textual style that now gets utilized. Okay, now I don't actually want that, so I'll use Ctrl+Z to take me back a step and remove it from view. Right, so what do? Make sure you've got your text tool, click somewhere within your text, and then from this point, whatever style you choose will now be updated and reflected within your text. So with this one, for example, the same one, well, there you go. We now see that text style integrated within our text. And because it is selected, I can choose any of these other styles. Okay, any of these really. Just keep flicking through until you find the one you like. You might need to navigate down. Now, I don't particularly like this one. It's a little bit too, I don't really know how to describe it, but it doesn't suit this image. However, I do want to use it for the moment, just to show you something that we can see over in the Title Properties panel. You'll see that this particular text color, or rather the fill, is a multitude of the same shade. It's not just one color. As we can see here where it says fill type, what we see is a 4-color gradient. Now the 4 colors that have been chosen as part of this style are very complementary. They're not too far apart. They reside pretty much within the same color area. But if you want to make this completely different, then click on one of the color boxes in each of the corners. And those corners reflect where that particular shade is within the letter. This one in the top left-hand corner will reflect the color or the shading or the blend of that color anyway in the top left of each individual letter. If I want to change it, double click on here, and then this opens up our color picker once more. Maybe I don't want it to be the color it is at the moment. Maybe I want it to be darker. Well, I'll choose somewhere else within here and OK it. Consequently now, we see in our rectangular area that particular darker shade, well, we can see it there, can't we? And also we can see it on our letters. It's darker in the top left of each of those letters. Let's go to the extreme. I'll click on the bottom right hand corner, and I'll also go to the extreme in terms of color. I'll choose within here so I can grab a blue and then click anywhere here to select a shade of blue, and then I'll OK it. OK, and of course our rectangular area updates. We now see that 4-color gradient, darker in the top left, blue at the bottom right, which is reflected in each of our individual letters. At the bottom right of each individual letter, we can just about see that sort of shaded blue there. Of course, you don't have to use the color square. You can use the color picker if you want to grab a color from within your image, like we did earlier. So I'll do that. I'll click here on the guitar. OK, and because our bottom right hand corner is still selected, then that now takes on that color. If I want to grab the bottom left, first of all I need to select it. It opens up the color picker. I don't actually want it, so I'll close that. What I want to use is the color picker tool, and then now I'll choose a different area within the guitar. So now we get complementary colors all round, well pretty much anyway, drawn from the guitar. OK, I'll just grab my selection tool and click away outside of the text. And there we go, looking great. Although I don't really believe that, do I? But you can see the principle of what we can do when we want to use text styles and then adapt them to suit our look. Right, I'm going to leave it here then, and in the following tutorial, as I mentioned a moment ago, we're going to look at the Title Properties panel running down the right-hand side.